hear from many talks, right? What is the underlying core? What is the underlying core technology of your blockchain? The way how you store your data, right? The data can grow like extensively when many transactions are happening in the platform. So the better mechanism to store the data is important. At the same time, I should be able to parse or get the data as quickly as possible. So that's where there's a concept called Merkle trees comes into picture. Right? They also works on a concept called direct acyclic graphs, DAG we call it, DAG. So what IOTA has done is they have taken the concept of DAG and they customize the DAG to meet their needs. For example, I cannot use the blockchain as is, right? I cannot take just an Ethereum or I cannot take a Hyperledger Fabric and then deploy the the node in my edge device, right? Because it needs a good amount of resources, it needs a good amount of storage. There are various dependencies to run the blockchain. So you cannot directly interface it, or you cannot have the transactions that every microsecond your data is generated at your IoT devices, or maybe you are consolidating or aggregating the data maybe for every 15 minutes. Even then, that is a huge amount of data that you are generating from your devices. So I need to have a great scalable solution to meet the demand of my IoT devices. Right? That's exactly the IOTA has done. They have re-engineered their DAC concepts and created a protocol called Tangle, and they explicitly say that it is infinitely scalable platform. That's what they claim from the IoT side. I have played with it, but you can spend more time on understanding how are they going to connect your IoT devices to IOTA platform. And they also come up with a concept called now a data marketplace. Now you have various IoT devices connected to the IOTA platform, and they generate the data, right? So once, let us say, take the same example of your smart meter. Your smart meter now connected to IOTA. So once you connect it to IOTA, your smart meter continuously generates the data. So there will be a consumer and who wants to know that, let us say in one particular area in India, let us take maybe in in Karnataka or in Tamil Nadu. They want to understand what is the power utilization compared to other places in India. Or let us say one small state or a city, how their consumer utilization of the power, right? They need the data. So that might be needed for them to come up with a new product or to come up with a new business itself, right? So there is a buyer for your data, what you are generating. So what IOTA has done is they created a marketplace on top of their platform. So the marketplace is the consumer can even sell their data. The provider can sell the data which is generated from their devices, and the consumer who is buying the data will pay for it. So that's exactly the data marketplace. And all this happens in a decentralized way, in a secured way between the provider and the consumer. So that's what it has been enabled on the IOTA side. So I recommend to go and check the IOTA website. I guess it is iota.org. So let's come back to and again, this IOTA is completely public and decentralized. If you want to anything to have it on the private side, so that may not be the right platform to go ahead. But you can look at leveraging the other blockchain platform to set up as a private node. So let's come back to the next one called Chronicle. So Chronicle is I can say it's a 5 years startup company. They started with IoT, where they generated we call them as a tagends, right? A small tags, and you can stick the tag on any product. So the tag has a unique identifier, and it identifies saying that, okay, this is the product. For example, let us say you are purchasing a laptop from particular, let us say Amazon or from Flipkart. The laptop will have a chronicled sticker, and it has all the information needed for that laptop configurations, right? Uniquely identifying that laptop. Right? That information will be available inside that a simple chip which is sticked onto your laptop, and you can scan that and get all the necessary information. what is the advantage that we get with that is avoiding the counterfeit. So you can guarantee that you got a genuine product from the manufacturer. So that's where they started their company. But when I looked at from last couple of years when I was interacting with them, they pivoted their business. So instead of just identifying only the validation of the product, they moved from there into completely healthcare. So maybe when we come to the healthcare, I will explain more about the chronicle. How did they pivoted and how they are helping the healthcare as an industry by leveraging blockchain technologies. Right? We will talk about that. And then filament is also pretty much on the same lines of the IoT taggants that I have explained. The tags will be used to quickly identify the authenticity of the product. Right? So you can think of, so I'm keeping a QR code or I have a barcode. So is that QR code or a barcode really helps me to identify the authenticity of the product? I can say till some extent, but not 100%, because anybody can copy those content. I can just use any mobile phone, just scan my QR code, barcode, read the content, and that can be used. Right? So that's important for us to enable in such a way that the information, whatever is going to have it on those tagants, are secure and nobody can tamper it, right? And it is again, the data which is stored is also not tampered from the manufacturer side. So that's important. So let's go back to the next sector, which is the education sector. So you can look at now, or even look at one of the interesting area when we are actually analyzing, saying that what are the various use cases that we can build in India on the education as a vertical. So actually we explored, we worked with one of the professor in IISc, Indian Institute of Sciences, and then we completely shared our thought process, saying that okay, we will build one product called as a certificate store. Right? When I say the certificate store, it is not just the certificates within India. For example, as a student, you want to apply for visa to go to, let's say, United Kingdom, or you want to go to Australia, or you want to go to US for your further studies to do MS or PhD or whatever it is. Right? So you need to get a certificate from the respective universities, right? Indicating that you have performed so and so, whatever it is, right? It can be your BTech or engineering. So you get that certificate from your university. University has to stamp on it. You take it and then you send it across to the necessary visa provider for the respective countries, right? Or for the universities where you want to do your the next education is MS or PhD. So they need to go and again validate whether this certificate is authentic, right? Is the certificate is given by the right university, or is it the university which signed is the one who actually produced the certificate? So they also takes time. So it actually takes a good amount of time from both from the student as well as from the universities to go and validate all these certificates. Right? So we come up with a concept on how we can securely get these certificates onboarded onto the platform. All the players, like the universities who actually, like the student has studied and passed the exams, they explicitly do a signature, or we can say the authority who actually confirms, okay, the certificate or these marks or whatever it is, it's they signed on it, right? And which is completely in a tamper-proof record system, and only accessible by the respective student or by the university who actually assigned for that student, right? And then this information can be shared across the borders to various universities. The student can say that okay, I have applied for let's say one of the universities in UK, and then he can say that okay, I am sharing my information to the universities from this time frame, and they can go and look at my information in the platform, right? So we have come up with a quick proof of concept and then shared with ISC. And surprisingly, we came to know that Indian government is working on that. And the people in the ISC also working on are helping the Indian government to have the certificates on the platform which is powered by the blockchain, right? So you you can look at from the Indian side itself. the way how we are storing the certificate itself is changed, right? So we can have, it's not just only the online certificate, it's the players inside the ecosystem, right? Like the universities who authorizes saying that so and so the certificate is valid certificate, right? So so that process is pretty much automated. So you can clearly say that how the blockchain has changed the way how we share the information in the education side. So there's a SAP has acquired a company called TrueRec. So they also focus more on education and storing the record keeping of the students uh, inside that blockchain platform. And also Sony and IBM is also pretty much working on coming up with various services or the platforms focusing on education sector. So they leverage the existing blockchain technologies. For example, IBM is a backend supporter of Hyperledger Fabric, right? They are the ones who are the sponsor for it, and they take the Hyperledger Fabric and applying it from the education use cases perspective, right? So these are some of the examples. Let's go to the next one, which is completely different than the other areas. So like other areas I talked about more on the respective verticals. It can be finance, or it can be entertainment, or it can be healthcare, supply chain, or in the real estate. Now we're talking about from the web itself. So when I say web, so for example, we are using Google Meet, right? So when I say Google Meet, it is powered by Google, or you are using Zoom, or you are using Teams, or whatever it is, right? It is completely centralized. So when you say that meet.google.com, the URL to connect to this conference. So what exactly it means is when I hit that URL, it actually goes and hits a DNS servers. So when I say DNS servers, it is a DNS provider who actually solve your name resolution problem, right? From the name to the IP address, they map it and then goes to the respective IP addresses of Google data centers, or it can be even Google Cloud, which enables this conference for us, right? So which is again centralized component. Both the video conference, which is provided by Google, or the DNS servers which we are hitting, is also provided by the centralized guys. Now there are various companies who are working now by leveraging the blockchain as the underlying technology and moving from centralized to decentralized. So when I say decentralized, so there will not be any single authority who is responsible of that service. So it is by the various players inside the DNS as a decentralized service, right? So that is one example. The next example is from the storage perspective itself. So I give you a good example here. So when I say the storage, right, we store a lot of documents. Take your Google Drive, or take OneDrive from Microsoft. If you're using Windows machine, by default you get certain storage from Microsoft. If you're using Gmail, you get by default certain storage from Google, where you can store your videos, the pictures, documents, right? But all of them again are in the centralized way. Is there any way I can store that information in a decentralized way rather than depending on one particular provider, right? So what is the guarantee that when I'm storing my information on a particular provider, it can be anyone. So what is the guarantee that they're not using your information, right? I am 100% guarantee that they are reading our information. They may not be using it for wrong things, but they are definitely reading your information. That is 100%. I can clearly say that. How I can say that? When you let me take the simple example of your mail. When you are sending an email, you'll also see the respective set of advertisements. All the advertisements will be very much aligned with the context that you are sending the email. Let us say you can test it, or you send an email about a particular product. So let us say about a Dell laptop in email from to your friend. The next minute, or not even next minute, while you are sending the email itself, you can see the advertisement saying that can be from Amazon or Flipkart, saying that, or from the Google Ads says that, okay, so there are laptops available and these are the configurations. This is what your friends are using. You will get all the necessary recommendations as an advertisement next to your email, right? So how do I change that from a centralized piece to completely decentralized, and I want to be the owner of my information? Is where the new things coming up called IPFS. So IPFS is interplanetary file system, and we use IPFS extensively in storing the data, right? So when you say IPFS, you can actually hook your laptop as an IPFS node, or to your storage. Storage is another provider, or Filecoin is also another provider. You can install the necessary utility from storage Filecoin in your laptop, and you can share your storage. For example, when you purchase your laptop, you might have purchased with 1 TB as a size. Then you may not be using complete storage for your needs. You may be using 25% or maybe using 50%. So which means your laptop has 500 GB capacity of data storage, which you can sell it and incentivize or get incentivized for sharing that storage. That's exactly the business model of storage and Filecoin. So they are coming up with a decentralized storage where anybody can actually hook their laptop into the network and then share their storage, right? So that's called a decentralized storage. And as and when your storage gets used, you will get respective coins, and then you can go and convert those coins into fiat currency. So that's the mechanism of your storage and Filecoin. They're not even stopped at the storage level. So they went ahead with the next level. So when you say next level is your resources. So we take the example of the data center. If you take any enterprises, most of the data centers are designed for worst case, right? So I might have a data center where I might have, we pretty much design for high reliability, right? We design for failover modes, and we design for DR, which is disaster recovery. So we need to keep all that in mind when you are designing your overall underlying infrastructure in your data centers. So if you look at the standard research report, you will not be using more than 50 or 60% of your resources in your data center. So which means around 30 to 40% of the resources in a data center is basically are getting consumed by getting the power is consumed but nowhere used in the data centers. So the companies like Storage or I guess it's a Filecoin, they're coming up with how do we share the resources from your data centers which are not utilized. When I say the resources can be your memory, the resources can be your CPU, the processing power, and in a decentralized way. So that's where I can say that we call it as Web 3.0. So the Web 3.0 is more focused towards a decentralized storage, a decentralized web, a decentralized resource computations that you can have it, or even decentralized hosting. So right now, when you are hosting your app, you will go to either the cloud providers or you will go to your hosting providers like your GoDaddy or DigitalOcean or whoever it is, or any of the cloud providers like Microsoft Azure or AWS or Google Cloud or IBM Bluemix or whatever it is, right? You will go to the respective place. But is there any way that you can look at from the decentralized hosting perspective, where you can host your applications and it can be completely decentralized? There's no need to have as part of your running from particular service provider. So that's exactly the concept of your decentralized apps. So when I say decentralized, so many times what we say decentralized, but it is not a truly decentralized. But a true decentralized apps doesn't have any dependencies on your explicitly on a server, right? You can run your DApp in your laptop. So your laptop itself like runs your app, and the app doesn't have any dependencies. An app directly interfaces with underlying blockchain platforms which is needed. For example, you are building your DApp on an Ethereum. So you don't need to explicitly host, I can say, host your application anywhere else, right? You don't need to host in the cloud, or you don't need to host in any other hosting provider. Instead, you run your application, which is built as a decentralized app. It can be I can say your React app, right, or your Angular app. It runs on your laptop itself and talks to your blockchain, maybe using your let us say if you take Ethereum. So they use any RPC calls through your Web3 provider, or if you're using Hyperledger but Apology Fabric is mostly on the private. Or look at from like on the Neo blockchain or NEM blockchain. You can talk to their blockchains directly, right? So that's how you build your decentralized apps, which doesn't have any dependency on any other intermediary services. But that may not be the right use case for the enterprises, because enterprises, you might have to start integrating with various line of business applications. So you cannot just say that I build only the decentralized app which runs in a complete isolation mode. It may not be. So they need to explicitly to be executed along with the other systems. You need to integrate with the enterprise systems, right? So then only you will see the right value for the enterprise use cases. So little different compared to your decentralized web. So let's move to the next vertical, which is the records keeping. I can say one of the vertical, or compared to even the healthcare, the real estate is the place where the technology is not heavily used. They move the technology by, I can say, for engineering aspects, right? They have very high-end equipment or a high-end engineering machinery to build something, right? Or to build the bridges. But underlying systems, when I can say underlying systems, is like the IT technologies which are required for the real estate is not heavily used, right? So there's a good amount of scope there where you can bring the technologies like blockchain in real estate, right? I'll give you some of the examples and which people are working other than just keeping only the records, right? Records is can be your agreements or whatever it is when you're buying your land or buying your apartment or whatever it is. That is a very simple use case. But look at the people how they are thinking, especially leveraging blockchain as a technology. So, for example, if somebody wants to build a mall in a primary area, it can be in Bangalore or it can be in Chennai or in Hyderabad. They want to build, let's say, a big mall. So generally what they do is in a centralized approach. A big builder will go and they build it, right? And then they will give it for rent or sell it or whatever it is. But now the people are looking at in such a way that nobody will own that land or nobody will own that space. The space will be divided into smaller blocks, and anybody can go and purchase the small blocks. And as and when they get the money as a rent for that month, that will be distributed for the owners of those blocks. Is exactly the way dividing your property, right? If I have a big property, generally you divide and then sell it. But here, one property itself you are dividing into small pieces, and everyone can be owner of that piece, and they can use that to get the monthly rent. Then people are working on it. So there are platforms which are coming up to enable this kind of business models, so that people can be the owner of a particular mall. They get the monthly incentives being the owner, or they can even sell that basically to another person inside that network. So that's another evolution which is happening in the real estate side. And even I worked with one of the company I think sometime last year, right? So they are pretty much working on the paintings, right? So what we generally do is, if it is a very famous painting, we sell the painting as a one asset. Now people are looking at how do I divide that painting into multiple assets, and you can own that, the sub asset, right? So when the painting moves or changes the hands and any transaction happens, the owner of that piece of the paint also gets the benefited. So that's how they are looking at leveraging the technology from the records management perspective. So let me move on to the next vertical, which is supply chain. So there are great examples in supply chain. The early adopters of the blockchain technology, take Walmart, or take the logistic company called Maersk from US, from Europe, right? So they have leveraged the blockchain as a technology to reduce the waiting time in delivering the products. Take the example of Maersk, right? So when you are shipping from, let us say, from India to, let us say, Germany, from India it has to go to the customs within India and then cross various the borders and then reach the customs in Europe. and they need to validate what type of product that is going to be shipped, and what are the documentation needed for that. So that's going to take a huge amount of time, right? When you say the huge amount of time, is they literally has to wait to get that approvals, right? There's the same thing in any logistics company. It's not just through sea transport. It can be even happen on the road transport, air transport. So there are various players who need to validate the content and needs to get the approvals to move to the next level or to move to the next cycle in the shipment. So what exactly happens here is, when you have the platform as a blockchain and all your customs, all the necessary the compliance guys to be part of the network, even before the shipping starts shipped from the source, they have that information. On a real time, they know that how is the shipment is moving and what is there in that ship, right? Or in that shipment, in the logistics, and they have all the necessary documents which are required. So they no need to wait for the arrival of the shipment to sign off. They have the information which is tamper proof and transparent, and in a decentralized way, everyone in the network knows about what exactly the shipment and how it is moving, and they can take an action immediately, or if they need any additional information, they can do that then and there itself. Even before getting the shipment, they get that information, the dependent information, and then they can take a call, right? So that's how they are improving the process of delivery in the logistics side. The same thing applies on the custody transfer, right? So let's take the simple example of petrol bunk, right? You take your bike and you go to a petrol bunk, and then you get a couple of liters of petrol. It's very easy for us to get a couple of liters of petrol from a petrol bunk, but underlying there are various technologies or various process that happens. For example, there is a common storage where we store, or where the Indian Oil or Bharat Petroleum or HP Petroleum, they need to store that respect to gas or diesel petrol, and from the central storage where they store this, they need to ship that into the respect to retail guys, and there is a big amount of conflicts. So from the central storage, they say that okay, we delivered, let us say, 10,000 liters of petrol today, and the retail guy says no, I received only 9,998. There is a deviation of 2 liters, and the settlement will not happen. The transfer doesn't happen. The transfer happens, but the underlying money settlement doesn't happen because of the deviation, right? How do we do that settlement? By using the custody transfer, so that they can do the settlement for that 9,998 liters, and then for the other 2 liters where we have the deviation can be settled later, right? Based on identification where exactly the loss has been happened. So that's on the custody transfer. We actually did a good amount of study on it, and then we have applied to the a secured way of custody transfer, especially from the oil industry. So that's another example that you can look at from the supply chain. And I can clearly say that next to the finance, supply chain is the one who is heavily adopting the blockchain as a technology and changing the way they deliver things today. Come back to the next, the final one, called as healthcare. So look at the information from the patients, right? So if you go to the hospital today, from one hospital to the other hospital, the information is not shared. And other than the patient data, let us say I'm the patient. Other than me, everyone is the owner of my data, right? It is available in multiple hospitals, and they are the owner of my data. So is there any way I can have my patient data in a secure and where I am the owner, and I can share whenever it is required to the respective doctor whom I want to share? So that's called as the patient record management, which is going to completely change the way how the healthcare is going to disrupted with blockchain. So Bit Health is one of the company which is working in this area, and Nirman Technologies, we are also working on the healthcare side, bringing the patient data onto the blockchain, right? So I also said like Chronicle as a company, they pivoted from the IoT side to MediLedger. So now if you look at Chronicle is having a ledger called MediLedger, and that is pretty much now used to distribute the medicines in US. So they are partnered with various distributors. They're part of their Mediledger network, which is built on blockchain, and that will help people when they're consuming or when they're buying the medicine based on the particular prescription. They can quickly validate even the prescription which is available as part of their network, and they can even validate the product the medicine which they are purchasing on the Mediledger network. That's what they have pivoted from IoT to focusing more on the healthcare as a use case by coming up with a ledger called Mediledger. So that's how they have completely changed how they're going to distribute the medicines in US. So you can go and read that case study. That is the way the Chronicle has evolved themselves in the healthcare sector. So these are some of the examples I thought I will share, and I mentioned with most of the use cases as well where we have leveraged these technologies. For example, how we have used in the supply chain, how we have used in the IoT side, right? And how we are working on the healthcare side. Remaining sectors, I just gave an examples. On the web, as I said, now we have I explained about IPFS. There is another technology called IPDB, which is interplanetary database, right? So when I say interplanetary database, the database which is built by taking the blockchain as the concept. For example, they have taken MongoDB or RethinkDB as a base and written a layer on top of it, bringing the blockchain consensus, the blockchain like immutability concepts into the overall platform, into the database itself. So you can go and read about it called ipdb.org, which is a completely decentralized and highly scalable database built on top of the existing databases. Or you can also look at another example from the cloud providers like AWS. AWS comes with a concept called QLDB. QLDB is a quantum ledger database. So they enable the database with the blockchain capabilities, where you can take a snapshot of your database and generate the hash and use that hash for validating or modification of the data in the overall database. Right? So there's a lot evolving in various verticals. Right? You can just keep an eye on and see how the technologies are changing in these verticals. So that's about on the disrupting technologies. So one of the key area in most of the things is your smart contracts, right? So I can say that Ethereum is the one which actually brings this concept as the first player into the blockchain, and you can build your rules and then deploy those smart contracts. So maybe you might have heard from various other sessions. I'm not spending much time here from the blockchain how the smart contracts are going to be, right? So in the interest of time, I just skip this. Maybe I'll try to cover maybe in the next session. So let's spend some time on the blockchain in enterprise. I will just take one of the use case, then you will get how actually the industry is getting actually disrupted, right? So let me get one more small use case, and then I will open it for the questions. Where is my... Okay, where is this use cases? Okay, cool. Move to new window. Okay, so let me take one example. I have a lot of use cases where we thought I will share it, but I will do that. So let's take this example. So this is called the parts track and trace. So one of the examples which we have a use case where we have implemented in my past company is how do I track and trace the parts which are used in building the big product. So this is applied to the product called turbocharger, right? When I say the turbo is actually improves the performance of your car, especially your petrol car, right? And that is built with a particular engine. So it improves the power of the engine so that the speed can be picked up and maintain the engine health. So, but this the turbo, whatever we are going to build, has various suppliers. So one of the biggest problem is the quality of the supplier. So what happened is if a one particular part got an issue, so what happens is, since it is integrated into the engine, you need to recall all the cars where the turbo got inserted in the engine, right? It's not just one particular part. So the recall is actually very I can say time consuming and a huge amount of loss for the manufacturer. So the importance here is, how do I enable the traceability of where exactly the part is went into the turbo, into the respective car. If you have the traceability maintained, in case of any issues or any quality issues, we know that okay, this batch of actuators has an issue. So then what I can do, I can easily map exactly what car has this part. I can just recall only that set of cars instead of calling the complete batch and go and check which is having the problem. This exactly is what we have solved here. So once when a particular asset has been uh, leaves the production line, right, and it is assembled into the overall product, we need to have a kind of traceability, right? You can look at examples like SAP. SAP has their own ERP systems. So we manage all the part informations in the respective systems, either in the SAP or in any other ERP systems. But do they really provide the traceability? As of now, no. And they are working on it. For example, if you look at SAP, SAP is coming up with their own platform called Enado, which also contains blockchain as a service, which is very much integrated into overall the resource, the planning, or all the modules, whatever they are having in the ERP systems are getting integrated with the blockchain capabilities, right? The features of the blockchain. So how do we enable this immutability of the quality data which comes along with the part, so that I can have the complete traceability, right? So if I look at that impact, the creation of the decentralized ledger and a transparent data access to my suppliers knows that what on my I can say the roadmap, like what is my demand of the parts to the supplier, so that he can work ahead of the time and then understand what exactly the demand is and how he can generate and what is my quality expectations. All that is pretty much transparent to the suppliers, so that they can work and then they can give the bid and then they can start manufacturing that. And when they deliver these products, they'll also give the quality documents for every batch of delivery, so that the quality the quality document will go and sit in the blockchain to in an immutable manner, right? And that will become my single source of truth rather than depending on anyone else, right? But we also have a challenges. It's not like it's a cakewalk, right? So for example, if you look at some of the suppliers, some of the suppliers may not even have IT systems. We cannot expect or assume that all the suppliers in the overall network or whoever providing, they may not have an IT systems, right? They are very the core the part manufacturing guys. Let's take a simple example. A bolt manufacturer may not have an IT system. He just manufactures the bolts and gives it. But the bolt dimensions, is there any variation, has an impact in the overall assembly line. So it is important that don't expect that everyone will have the IT systems. So that's exactly we also ran into. Some of our suppliers are not having the IT systems. What we did is we have built a mobile application on top of the blockchain, so that the mobile application is handed over to the supplier, and what he does is he uses the mobile application to generate the documents, right, as the part moves from the product line. So he provides the data there, and he actually takes the pictures of the parts, and we have our own the machine learning piece to analyze those pictures. So that information as an interface to our blockchain comes and sits in the blockchain platform. Right? The other challenge is integrating with some of the suppliers, maybe high-end suppliers. They might even have the ERP systems. So they will say that, okay, go and integrate with my ERP system. So why do I have to again use your blockchain platform as a separate? So they may not have time or investment to build or integrate uh, with the existing system. They will say, okay, you go and do it. So that's some of the challenges that we have encountered. And this is the high level architecture on how we have implemented. So we take the concept of remember that the concept of the Ethereum, right? That's from the limitations perspective, which I'm going to cover in the or the challenges perspective, which I'm going to cover in the next session. What are the challenges that we encounter with the blockchain? We will completely focus in that session. But yes, to overcome certain challenges, we have taken off an approach called on-chain and off-chain storage mechanisms, and we store only the necessary data required on the Ethereum, and all other players will be part of the network, right? So, and build a decentralized applications and also the mobile application which will interface with the underlying technologies. And we have an API layer which integrates with the supplier LOB system.
Sridhar
That's
sir,
how we have.
sorry for the interruption, sir.
Hmm?
This is Karthikanan, one of the
Go ahead.
coordinating network. Hello, sir.
Yes, sir. Go ahead, sir.
Sir, can we have a break for 15 minutes, sir, and then you can
Yes, yes.
continue?
Yeah, definitely. So it's at 11:15. So I will stop with this slide.
Okay, sir. You just continue the session with the second link, sir, by 11:30, sir.
Yes, I will do that. I have that information. Thank you.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay. So this is how our overall architecture, and I will open it for the questions now. So let me know if you have any questions. You can leverage the chat window, type your questions. I will be there for next 5 minutes to answer all your questions. In case if you have any questions after the session, feel free to reach out to me. I can definitely help you out whatever is possible to answer your questions. Let's open for questions for till 11:15, and then we will regroup again at 11:30 for the next session. Okay, so one question is, any free resources for blockchain? Yes, definitely. So I will. So for example, if the people are working with Ethereum, right? So there is something called online IDE for we call as just type something called remix editor. So this is a great remix editor. So you can build all your smart contracts. You can go and deploy your smart contracts in Ethereum. So you can so they have two different type of languages. One is Solidity and the other one is Viper. You can build either of the languages in Solidity and then deploy your contracts, right? If you want to know more about the documentation and how you can build the smart contracts, you can look at documentation here. Or I will also suggest that you can look at something called Truffle. So Truffle is another framework which we can leverage. So they have frameworks to build your decentralized applications. You can build your smart contracts, right? And you can build what you can say the test your smart contracts and decentralized applications. And it is not like you have to always connect it with the blockchain. So you can run your blockchain. If you look at the Remix IDE, the blockchain actually runs in the browser itself, the lightweight JavaScript-based blockchain engine. But if you want to run your blockchain in your local machine, you can also leverage something called Ganache. Ganache will help you to deploy the Ethereum blockchain on your laptop, and you can pretty much use that for building your smart contracts, testing your smart contracts. And Drizzle is your React-based decentralized application. You can build your applications using Drizzle, which interacts directly with the smart contracts. So you can look at any of those. And Truffle itself is a framework which will help you to build your smart contracts and enable the deployment in a DevOps manner. Like you can have continuous integration testing and then deploy that into the Ethereum. Either it can be in the Ropsten or it can be in the public mainnet. So you can look at any of these, and then you can go and then look at the docs. The docs gives you a good list of documentation. For example, how do I create a project, right? And how do we deploy the contracts? So this is for the Ethereum. The same thing is available from Linux Foundation for Hyperledger Fabric. You can look at that, or you can look at from the IBM. IBM also has the various the Hyperledger documentation, which you can go and use it. So I think that's it. So we have time till 11:15. So let's take a 15 minutes break. Then we will regroup again for the next session. So you can join the session and then look at, like we looked at now positive side of the blockchain. Let's look at from the other side of the blockchain, and what are the workarounds that we have, and how the enterprises are adopting the blockchain even with the challenges. So we will look at more of those examples, and then we will discuss more. And definitely, I will give you more time to ask all your questions in the next session. So then feel free to get your questions, and then let me know whatever the help that you need. I can definitely help you out to get the information. Okay, thanks everyone, and